Welcome to Altar. I'm your host, Nicole Moline. This podcast explores the practice of transformation, of growth, as a dance between hustle and flow, altering, changing, growing, becoming, and altering, offering, surrendering, opening to divine conspiracy. It's the dance of the leader, athlete, creator, entrepreneur, committed not just to optimal expression, but to exceptional being. So here are adventures in sweat and divine conspiracy. Awake to all the grit, dirt, and complexity of our world. Alert to the graces that come alongside the struggle, the hustle. Encouragement, an infusion of courage for the moments you need it most. I'm your host, Nicole Moline. Welcome to Altar. Beloveds, I'm thinking about Advent, what this season means to me now. How our waiting for the light we need, the light we're calling in, whatever form that takes for us right now, how the waiting changes us. The waiting, the holding space for, the longing and anticipation prepares us, expands us, shapes us to be able to hold it. The space between a vision, a prayer, and its arrival is holy space. In the first episode of this podcast, a few years ago now, I mentioned that in my early 20s, I went to seminary, which is also known as divinity school. What a name, huh? A graduate school for students training to be pastors or priests. In short, spiritual leaders. I did a couple master's degrees, one in philosophy of religion and one in theology. I was one of only a few women in the programs, probably less than 10% of a very male culture, and in this case, pretty toxically masculine. It wasn't a place that actually valued feminine voices in leadership. I knew I was called to spiritual leadership, and I sensed in some vague way that it would take a different form from what I had seen growing up. My spiritual horizons at the time weren't wide enough to know that there are quite a few incredible progressive divinity schools that value and champion voices the church has historically marginalized and condemned. Unsurprisingly, these schools also celebrate the arts and creativity in general, because those on the margins, those who see things differently than the mainstream, can often express a fresh perspective that brings new light on our understanding of spirit, God, the luminous and numinous. For the last 20 years, I've been asking the question of what my relationship is to the church that has been a source of wonder and arrogance, and healing and corruption, and forgiveness and judgmental superiority, and belonging and exclusion, and wisdom and closed-minded certainty. And I have found so much unexpected joy and a sense of collaboration with Spirit, creating and leading from the outside, from the sidelines, and discovering voices and luminaries and accounts of encounters with Spirit I hadn't heard before. All these versions of God, of Goddess, all these languages. I would say the deepest meaning of the gospel is that there's really no such thing as outside. But that's another podcast. More good news is that there's a revolution underway in religious communities around the world, in churches and temples and mosques, as marginalized voices are creating their own platforms, telling previously suppressed stories and asking questions they weren't allowed to ask. So much light is breaking in, so much empathy, compassion, and repentance. That old word meaning a changing of the mind is flooding through. There's a new world coming. Around Christmas time, though, I feel an ache. I feel all these questions bubble up as I remember the ceremonies around this high point of the year. It's like I've entered a sacred cave filled with candles and incense. The altar at its center has been taken away. The gathering of devotees has left. But there's a whiff of the divine. There's a longing to worship. I'm sharing this story because I have a feeling many of you are also in the midst of a spiritual evolution, deconstruction, a reorientation that brings you a mix of liberation and longing, expansion and nostalgia, a kind of homesickness for a home that no longer exists, a community that you love and have outgrown, an in-betweenness. If you're feeling this way, I'd really love to connect with you and hear your story. Send me a direct message on social media or via my website, NicoleMoline.com. I want to create community for us spiritual wanderers. The word Advent means the arrival of a notable person, thing, or event. It comes from the Latin adventus, arrival. In the Christian tradition, Advent is the season leading up to Christmas, technically the 4 Sundays before Christmas. It's often observed by fasting and a sense of solemnity or even grief, a groaning, acknowledging the hunger of waiting for what we need. I can't help but notice the echo of Advent and adventure, the adventure of Advent, the season of the unexpected. The great fantasy writer Madeleine L'Engle wrote a little poem about it. This is the irrational season when love blooms bright and wild. Had Mary been filled with reason, there'd have been no room for the child. The irrational season, the season to leave room for wonder, to hold space for light to break through. I love that Advent is a season of 4 weeks building up to the single day of Christmas, because the waiting changes us. The anticipation, the holding space, the calling in changes us. It's no surprise human babies take 9 months to be formed, in part because when a mother gives birth, 2 people are being born. She is birthing a baby, and she is birthing herself as a mother. And it takes a good 9 months to prepare, to be shaped by the space you're holding, to become ready for it. So I ask us today, at the beginning of this season, what is the light you are calling into your life? A transformational force of healing, maybe a relationship, an idea, a creation, something beyond you. It may very well be within you, but something that feels beyond you, feeling the need for something to crash in, to break in to your current reality. What if you decided the waiting is holy? The space in between the desire and the arrival is what prepares you for it. What if you can commune with the soul of what you're calling in before it arrives? What if in meditation or prayer, you can align with it, rise to its frequency? What if you imagine that prayer or meditation as the decoration you might do to your home in anticipation of a coming holiday, a time to prepare for and celebrate what's coming? What if you take this season as a time of holy waiting for the light you're calling in, of making a practice of hope? I love Krista Tippett's definition of hope in her beautiful book, Becoming Wise, an inquiry into the mystery and art of living. She writes, I define hope as distinct from optimism or idealism. It has nothing to do with wishing. It references reality at every turn and reveres truth. It lives open-eyed and wholeheartedly with the darkness that is woven ineluctably into the light of life and sometimes seems to overcome it. Hope, like every virtue, is a choice that becomes a habit, that becomes spiritual muscle memory. It is a renewable resource for moving through life as it is, not as we wish it to be. Hope is a choice that becomes a habit, that becomes a spiritual muscle. Yes. So, what light do you need? What gift are you opening to? What light can you be? What gift can you be? I'm putting the finishing touches on an upcoming offering that will lead us into creating the year of our dreams next year. Bold words for these times, and I think we've never needed it more. The year of our greatest growth and creativity, an initiation into spiritual leadership, beginning with ourselves. You can join the announcement waitlist at NicoleMoline.com/visionary. I can't wait to share it with you. And I love this preface, this prefatory time we're in as a space to ask, what do I want to become next year? What is most essential to create? How might the light break in? For now, I'd love to share with you 2 tools I've created as bridges into the next year, the Integrate Journal and Envision Planner. Integrate is a gorgeous year in review journal to lead you through integrating this past year, all its gifts and lessons and realizations and releases, to alchemize this past year into wisdom. It's a perfect gift for anyone, a child or an adult, you'd love to have a meaningful, deep conversation with, or to offer them a process for quiet reflection. I love the idea of the Integrate Journal as a place setting for every guest at your table at a holiday gathering, for a surprising, rich conversation around the table. And the Envision Planner leads you forward, heartward, to a new year, crystallizing your priorities, refining your manifesto as you begin a daily journey of manifesting. Both are waiting for you at shop.NicoleMoline.com. I'd also love to invite you to join me in the Altar Together membership for luminous movement practices and meditations. I'll be offering some special sacred holiday practices to infuse this season with magic. Join at NicoleMoline.com/altar. And if this podcast encourages you, please rate it and review it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share it with a friend. I read every review as I shape the future of this podcast. I would love to hear what holiday traditions nourish your soul this season, or your own story of spiritual evolution, deconstruction, expansion. Message me on social media, on Instagram at Nicole Moline or Facebook at Nicole Joy Moline, or in response to my newsletter, which you can sign up for at NicoleMoline.com. The music in this episode are some of my favorite magical songs from my Spotify playlist, Sacred Holiday, which I've linked for you here. I'm wishing you ethereal mornings and wafts of incense and sacred music. My loves, I'm wishing you a beautiful, illuminating season of Advent, whatever holiday you're anticipating, and transformational, holy waiting as we altar together.